ever since its debut in the Rise of the Horde update that we got in Gears of War 4, this card's been very mysterious. So mysterious that in fact that a lot of people have tried to figure out the mystery behind it. What's the mystery, you ask? Well, despite what the card may tell you on the description right there, it actually gives you very different results out in the field. What I want to bring you today is the answer to this mystery about this card, how it actually works, and, well, just everything behind it in general. And ever since Gears of War 5 has been announced, I feel it very necessary to actually talk about this, since I've actually figured out the mystery long ago, but never really had the time to really make a video about it, or really detail it with anyone else. And yes, when I went on the web, looked around, nobody has ever found or even had conclusive evidence as to how this card works 100%. So with that out of the way, let's get started on breaking down what this card is and how it actually works. So, Magic Bullet. Critical hits with precision rifles, which is the long shot Mark or Ember, penetrate through enemies and increase the damage on the next shot. So this card in general is a really good card. I see myself using it a lot, and I think a lot of other snipers use it a lot as well in their builds, because you can heavily stack damage and you can constantly keep damage if you're a really good sharpshooter. And what they mean by critical hit, it's not just headshots, but on certain creatures, if you actually shoot, like, for example, the Snatcher or the Pouncer, if you shoot the glowing yellow bits on their stomach, that actually counts as a critical hit as well. So it's not necessarily pertaining to just headshots, it also pertains to those as well. But again, not everyone has an additional critical spot. This card starts off at level 1 at 15% damage per critical hit. And every single level after that is an additional 10% going all the way up to 55%, which is the max. So I'm going to pull up some data that someone put up because they were also questioning the math behind Magic Bullet, as they were just as confused as anyone else. So I'll go ahead and break down everything here because that's how I'm going to structure the rest of my video when it comes to testing and whatnot. So of course, top Magic Bullet, level 5, increased by 55. So that's what his card was. Base is the base card, so if you have the base damage card for precision rifles, the maximum goes up to 60%, or it's lower than that. So this guy had a max level 6 card, which is 60% damage with his sniper rifles. So he had that on his build. After that, he did 3 shots, critical hits, and here are the results below. Now, if you notice one interesting thing between all 3 shots, is that there's an interesting number that happens between them all, is that every single increase is going up by 85%, which is strange because Magic Bullet states that it goes up by 55% per shot or per critical hit, but that's not the case. So let's do some quick math and try to figure out what's going on here. So he had a base damage card of 60%, and his Magic Bullet is going to increase it by 55% per shot. So 60 times 55% is 33. We add 33 back into the 60, and that gives us 93. However, though, we're still short. We're short by about 52 points. So there's something else going on here that the card is not demonstrating, or that the game is not really being upfront with us. So clearly there's something more behind this. However, though, I can't just go off of these numbers. I'm going to have to go into the field and actually test it with my own builds and see what I can find out with my own numbers. So with this build, I have a base damage card of 40%, as you can see here when I switch my weapons, along with a Magic Bullet card of level 2, which is 25% per shot. Alright, so now that we have video footage of how it calculates, at least with my build, let's go ahead and jot this all down. So, Magic Bullet, level 2, 25% increase. My base damage card is at 40%. So, the first shot was 80, second was 120, and the third was 160. However, each increase between all 3 shots was 40%. Again, we're getting a much different number stated from Magic Bullet. So somewhere in the calculation, we're getting an additional 15% on top of the 25% that gives us that total 40. but what is it exactly? And if we do the math again, it turns out that we're 30 points short from the actual first shot. So again, there is something additional that we're missing, but the game doesn't really tell us yet. And I know some of you may want to draw the conclusion, oh, it's just taking your base card and then it's just applying that over and over. Well, if you were to try to apply that same logic to the previous chart, it doesn't calculate, it doesn't add up at all when it comes to that. So it's not that either. Alright, let's do one more test. How about we just get rid of the base damage card altogether and just do it with just Magic Bullet. And let's just see what happens. Alright, so after looking over that footage, and you do all the math when it comes to the difference between each shot, it turns out we get the same exact increase, 40%. However, we don't have a base damage card, so where are we getting this 40% from? Because it looks like from here, it goes from 40, and it just adds another 40 and then another 40. However though, again, mind you, my Magic Bullet card is at level 2, and I should be getting a 25% increase. So where is this 25% increase? What is it increasing exactly? Because I don't have any base damage cards on this build, as you guys saw earlier. Now, I know a few of you may be raising a few eyebrows now and wondering, okay, well, if it's not 25, maybe it's actually supposed to just be 40% at level 2. It's just the developers mislabeled the card, and this is what we're seeing. Well, I can safely tell you that that's not the case either, because if we were to add an additional 15% on, for example, the very first chart with a level 6 Magic Bullet card, which is 55%, it will go up to a 70%. And as we already established, well, every increase is by 85% instead. So it's not that either. We're still losing 15% somewhere in this calculation. So I'm not the only one who came with this conclusion with the whole 15% thing. Other people have made that observation themselves through doing the math. However, they don't know where this additional 15% is coming from or missing or whatever. However, one guy, I wish I can find that post again, but one guy stated that it might be possible that snipers, if you play as the sniper class, you have an innate 15% damage on precision rifle. The concept of classes having passives is actually not foreign. There is one class currently that has a passive, and that is the Scout. And with the Scout, if you pick up energy while you're in combat, meaning if there's one enemy alive in the field, at least one enemy alive, so long as you pick up energy, you will earn double energy from those pickups. And that's without the cards or anything like that. You naturally will have that. However, there's one small hole in that theory. Well, there is absolutely no evidence that suggests that whatsoever. There is nothing in the game. There is nothing on the Gears of War website. There is absolutely no evidence anywhere that says snipers have innate 15% damage increase with precision rifles. Trust me, I have looked everywhere. But because of the circumstances and how this card is actually adding up, the 15% does make some sense. But at the same time, it doesn't, because it's not proven. Because the devs have not come out and said, hey, yeah, you're right. There is a 15%. We just forgot to tell you. Now, I also managed to find someone who had just a level 1 version of this card and tried this without any cards whatsoever. And, well, I forgot what the rest of the shots were, but all I can say is that the first shot was 25%. So once again, we are still coming up short. And in this case, we're actually short by 10%. Whereas on all the other cards, it's been around 15% or so. So I think to solve this mystery, we should start right here at level 1. Just to see what the basic formula is, and then we're going to work our way up from there. Now, once again, since we are not using any base cards, what exactly is Magic Bullet multiplying here? Because we don't have anything else that tells us anything. Like, there is nothing in the game, and again, I don't even think anyone's even data mined if what the damage values are for weapons and such in Horde. Because I have the official strategy guide for Gears of War 4. And you want to know what it tells me when it comes to the weapons in Horde mode? This is what it tells me. It says every single weapon on their damage type, it's either low, medium, or high. I shit you not. They don't put actual numbers in the book itself. However, if you go to the verses, like the verses mode section of the book, it tells you hard numbers. Okay, the hammer burst does this much damage. All these other weapons do this much damage. Of course, since this game is online and they do updates, obviously those numbers are probably no longer true, but they did give us a definitive number. However, for some goddamn reason, when it came to Horde, it's like, oh yeah, the boom shot does high damage. What? What the fuck do you mean high damage? How are we going to calculate 15% increase from high fucking damage? That doesn't make any sense. And I wish I had the book here and shown you guys a picture of it, because I shit you not, that is what it tells you for every single weapon in Horde. That certain weapons do low damage, certain weapons do high damage, other weapons do very high damage, and it's bullshit. So clearly the strategy guide does not tell us, it doesn't give us these hidden numbers that the game doesn't tell us, so we're going to have to try to figure this out some other way. And I know what you might be thinking, well, maybe why don't you just take the versus numbers and just apply it to Horde? Well, again, they do actually alter the weapons in both Horde and in versus, so it was probably like that from the very beginning, so I don't want to just rely on that, period. Alright, so luckily for you guys, while I was ranting, I was actually looking up this information, because you can find this online, it's just very hard. I'll have a link to the description below, but this is the information that this website was so kind enough to relay to us that is in the official strategy guide. So the stats that you're seeing right here is for the long shot, but during the campaign. So we have a number of, magazine, the ammo, the rounds per minute, the recoil, the damage. We have a definitive number for damage, its headshot damage bonus, and its active reload bonus. So, alright, cool. So we got the numbers for campaign. Now again, I don't want to use these numbers for Horde because they do tend to make changes. Now let's go over to the Horde section for these weapons and see what they put for the long shot. Alright, so most of the information that we saw is there. However, we get extra bullshit that makes no fucking sense. Damage, very high. Okay. Accuracy, very high. Alright. Recoil low. Okay, that makes sense. And then you come down to headshot damage, very high. Like, what? Like, what the fuck? Like, I'm sorry. I'm gonna go on a little tangent here. I'm sorry, but the Coalition, if you're gonna make a class-based system in Horde, where you have cards that give you percentage increases for certain weapon types, then it would be in your best fucking interest to give us definitive fucking numbers for these weapons. That way we know how much damage we're pumping out, not this very high shit. Hey, can you tell me what 15% of very high is? I would love to fucking know, Coalition, because I don't fucking know, and I don't think anyone fucking knows here. So whoever is in charge of that, you're a fucking idiot. I can tell you that for sure. Anyway, that's the end of my little rant there. So, clearly we don't have information. But Magic Bullet is calculating from something. So we're going to go ahead and continue where we left off and try to figure out the level 1 version of Magic Bullet and see where it goes. Alright, so here we are back again with Magic Bullet level 1 with no base damage card. The first shot gave us 25% damage total for our next shot and whatnot. Alright, so with literally no other information around, because I have looked everywhere on the site, everywhere on the net as well, we do have that 15% that one guy mentioned. Alright, let's just take a crack at it. Let's just see if this actually adds up. Alright, so doing the math again for level 1 Magic Bullet with no damage cards whatsoever, we still have 7.75 points short from the actual increase. So what is it then? Well, I'll tell you how exactly I figured it out, and you're probably not going to believe me, but just trust me on this. So you know how this whole time I've been multiplying it by 25%? Well, I kind of just had a crazy-ass idea when I was doing research on this, and I decided, you know what if I just did this? I was looking at the equation, and I said, you know what? What if I just move the decimal point to this part? What would it come out to be? And you want to know what it comes out to be? So when you do the math like this, well, now all of a sudden we actually get a much closer number to what we've been seeing from the actual results. But wait a minute though. It's supposed to be a 15% increase. The way how I'm calculating it, this is practically a 1.5 increase, which is like essentially it's 150%. Now I know what you might be saying, well, what the fuck? Like that is way fucking different than what the card's supposed to say. However, though, as crazy as that number may be, we actually do have a very, very close number to what we've been seeing on the field. So in some respect, we are slowly figuring out how Magic Bullet is calculating. It's just not in the way that we thought. So while I was sitting back looking at the numbers and trying to figure out how exactly did it get to 25%, for example, or how I got to these other percentages, it then kind of hit me. I then noticed something about the game itself. Take a look at the cards that I have displayed up on the screen here. There is one common theme between these cards and every other card in this entire game. They all end with a 5 or a 0. If you ever go into your class setup or look at all of your Horde class cards, look at all the cards that you have that are maxed out. You'll notice the same thing. Every single card will end with a 0 or a 5. And that right there gave me a clue as to how this card really works. Now clearly there are some exceptions, but these exceptions are only contained within like 1 or 2 Horde cards that were only introduced in the Rise of the Horde. But aside from those exceptions, the whole entire game runs the same exact way with the same exact system. So it's clear to me that when it comes to the game and its numbers, it's clearly rounding. Now, I'm probably going to butcher this because I don't really remember a lot of this from like elementary school, because I was pretty terrible at math back then because I didn't really have the urge to really learn it. So for me going back and trying to relearn this shit, I'm going to get a lot of the terminology wrong, but hopefully I can try to describe it as best as I can. That way you guys can actually understand what I am trying to say. So if I do get it wrong, please let me know in the comments on what the actual terminology is. That way I can make that small correction in the comments itself. Now then, I believe the game is rounding by ones. So if we look at the 22.5 here, obviously because it's a 5, you round up. And I believe that's how rounding is supposed to go. But if I'm wrong, let me know. But this is from what I could remember. So because it's 22.5, it's a 5, we round up. That 22 now becomes a 23. However, though, we're still stuck with just 23, where the original number was supposed to be 25. So after that, you then need to round to the nearest fifths, because I think this is, because I had this conversation with someone before and they told me that this is the most correct answer. So you're rounding to the nearest fifths, because normally if it was to the nearest ones, this 23 would have went back down to a 20, which is what we're not looking for. But if we round it to the nearest fifths, because it's a 23, it rounds up to a 5, which is going to give us to a 25. Well, like I said, I probably butchered it, and maybe I have the wrong terminology, or probably I'm not explaining it well enough, but that's kind of the conclusion I have, and we're going to roll with that type of formula for the other cards, because so far, we found the 25% for the level 1 card. Alright, so let's backtrack to my level 2 Magic Bullet card with no damage cards whatsoever. And according to this chart, we had an increase of 40%. So, let's take these numbers. And again, since I'm not using a base damage card, we're only going to go off of that speculative 15% innate damage that snipers supposedly might have. And let's see if it actually fits with this. Alright, so we're also not going to be adding it up by 25%. We're going to add it by 2.5, which is technically 250%. So 15 times 2.5, well, holy shit, that comes out to 37.5, which is really fucking close to 40%. Now, if we use that rounding formula that I mentioned before, shit starts to fit together. So we take the 37.5, we round it up, it becomes a 38. Then from there, we round it one more time to become a 40. Now, I know what you might be saying, well, why not just, look at the 37 and just round up as it is? Well, you're going to see a little bit later that that version of the formula won't actually work for a certain card. So we actually got 40%. But let's test this one more time, but when we had a damage card available to us. And this is the one I was talking about, my level 2 card with my base damage card at 40%. So again, we still see the damage increase by 40, but because we have extra damage, well, we're going to have different numbers than the previous chart. So after doing many different versions of this formula with this set of numbers, it turns out that the base damage card, the 40% card, is applied after the initial calculations and whatnot. And I'll show you what I mean. So if we take the 40% and add this supposed 15 innate percent that snipers have, we come out to 55. Well, 55 times 2.5 comes out to 137.5, which that's absolutely not correct because the first shot is 80%. So let's try this other method. So what if we just took the 40% and just times that by 2.5? Well, we come out with 100, which is still not correct. We still have 20% more than what the game tells us. So the correct way to calculate it is we take this, again, supposedly 15% innate damage times 2.5, it comes out to 40. Then if we add the base damage card, it comes out to 80%. And if we go back to the chart, the very first shot came out to 80%. And once again, due to the nature of Magic Bullet, it's increasing it by 40% every single time. So if we also look back on the other chart without the base damage or anything like that, Magic Bullet alone added 40% every single shot. And in this instance, because we already had a 40% base damage boost, it just added on top of that, and it kept stacking on top of it. However, it doesn't just keep going, so to speak. It only goes off of Magic Bullet, and it doesn't calculate everything. If it calculated everything at once, then we'd be seeing much bigger numbers than what we're seeing now. Alright, so let's put this formula to the test. We're going to go back to the very original, the very first sheet or data that I introduced to you guys, and to see if this formula fits exactly what we're seeing here in terms of the increase and what the accurate numbers are. Alright, so we take the supposed 15% innate sniper damage, times that by 5.5 because the card says 55 at level 5. That comes out to an 82.5. We then take the 82.5 and we round it up to an 83. And then we take the 83 and it rounds up exactly to an 85. So we have the 85 that is listed in the chart there. Now let's keep doing more. So we take the 85 that Magic Bullet provides us and we add 60, which is the base damage card this person had for his testing. And that came out to 145 on the first shot. So on the second shot, we then add another 85 because, again, that's only from Magic Bullet. 145 plus 85, 230 on the second shot. And then finally on the third shot, 230 plus 85 equals 315. So let's go back on the other chart and see if any of these numbers are correct. Well, I'll be damned. There you have it. That's exactly how you figure out the Magic Bullet calculations. And it wasn't easy. This was not easy whatsoever to figure out. But I'm going to make some predictions. So obviously I only own the level 2 card. And the data that I've seen is only for level 5 and a level 1 card. So if anyone here that's watching this video owns the Magic Bullet card at any of the levels displayed on these charts, and you went into a match without any damage boost cards at all, and you did headshots on, and you noted on every single shot what the damage was, if any of this chart is true, or if it's not true, then let me know. And I want to give you a second task. Whatever damage boost card you have, whatever percentage it's at, wherever you have your magic bullet level set to, on every single shot on that chart, you add that additional damage boost on every single shot, and it should be accurate. Because if we went by my cards, my level 2 magic bullet card, and I used my 40% precision rifle damage card, all I have to do is on the first, second, and third shot, just add 40% on all 3 of them, and I get exactly what I just showed you guys earlier, where I have 80, then 120, then 160. So whoever's watching this and wants to put this to the test and wants to put my formula and my theory to the test, please, I urge you to try this out. I need to know if I figured it out or I got something seriously wrong. Because like I said, I have searched everywhere and nobody has a conclusive answer as to why Magic Bullet calculates the way it does. Whew, alright. So, after that whole long exposition, let's review. What did we learn from this video? Well, it turns out that Magic Bullet is calculating off of a separate hidden value that we're not aware of. And after that hidden value is calculated, whatever your base damage card is, it's then applied additively on top of every single shot when it comes to this card. On top of that, we also found out what the hidden value is. The hidden value happens to be 15%. So, I mean, again, it's not conclusive, it's not 100%, unless the devs come out and say something about it, but there's a slight possibility that snipers may, in fact, do have a passive, and that is 15% damage with precision rifles. The other thing that we learned is that Magic Bullet is not telling us everything that we need to know, because let's take level 1 Magic Bullet as an example. 15%. Well, it's actually not 15% at all. It's technically 1.5% or 150%. But here's the thing though. I guarantee you if the devs were to actually make that small change and change it to a 1.5 or a 150%, people will still be confused in general because we don't know about this 15% number that Magic Bullet is calculating off of. People will just go off of their base damage card, or yeah, their base damage card, and be like, well, wait a minute, this shit ain't making any sense either. So until people apply the 1.5 or the 150% calculation to the 15% before the base damage card, you're not going to get accurate numbers. Also, if they did change this card to say 150% and then so on and so forth, well, the people who have like a level 6 card, you know, they think that it'll say 650%. So when they go into a match and they start popping off heads, they're going to notice, well, wait a minute, I'm not getting 650% every single shot. The hell is this? So again, it's the same thing that I just mentioned earlier, but like I said, you know, no matter how they change it, it's still not going to make sense because people don't know about this hidden value that I found out. But again, it wasn't just me that found it out. It was just one guy, one random guy in one random post that I just can't find anymore, to be honest, and I wish I could. He mentioned, hey, snipers might have a 15% innate damage boost for precision rifles. Everybody was questioning him. They didn't believe him. Well, after all this thorough research, maybe I do start to believe him. Maybe just a little bit. But until the devs actually say something about it, we won't know for sure. But what I can tell you is that everything that I've shown you so far makes perfect sense. Everything fits into place exactly how it's supposed to be. And to be quite honest, if I never had that 15% number to go off of at all, I probably would not have figured out how this shit worked in the first place. Because honestly, how would anyone come to that conclusion? Like, how would anyone figure out 15%? Like, I really don't know. I'm sure that there's a way, but I just happen to be fortunate enough that I saw this random guy and I took that random ass number, applied it to all my formulas, and everything just so happened to fit. I didn't try it with any other number but 15. And it just so happened to work. I don't know. Call it fate, call it whatever, but I think I just lucked out. So, do you think Magic Bullet has been solved? The calculations behind it, the mystery behind it? You let me know in the comment section. Let me know if any of my predictions were true on the charts that I showed you before, along with that little extra step, that little extra challenge that I wanted to give you guys for if they did happen to be true, and if you added your base damage number to the equation. I do also want to mention when this card first came out, if you use this in conjunction with the explosive headshot, if the explosive headshot happened to kill someone, it would reset your headshot bonus. However, that's no longer the case as they patched that long ago, so you can safely use explosive headshots with Magic Bullet, no problem. And as you guys saw right now, I clearly killed other people with one headshot and I still kept my bonuses. By the way, did you know you can headshot explode a Swarmock? I didn't know that. Shit was fucking hard. So if you run out of boils to shoot at, just keep shooting him in the head. You still keep your Magic Bullet bonus. Why not? Alright, this video's gone on long enough. Hope you guys found this entertaining, at least a little bit. Hope I solved the mystery of Magic Bullet. Can't wait to hear you guys' replies. I do play Gears 4 Horde pretty often, so, you know, I'm always looking for people to play with. I only have like one other person to play with so far, so if anyone wants a good sniper, you can always hit me up. So, yep. Anyway, I don't know if I'll do any more Gears videos. I mean, there's other things I've noticed in Gears of War 4 Horde that hasn't been thoroughly explained that I've discovered. So maybe I will do a little bit more videos of Gears 4, but yeah, I understand this is just kind of out of my game, so to speak. But yeah, anyway, hope you guys enjoyed it. Sorry for the long video, but it was a lot of information, so oh well. Anyways, I'll see you guys next time.
Mission complete, and how? They're gonna tell stories about this one, boss.